Beautiful people, welcome to the Dr. Joy Show, your prescription for total wellness, and I'm your host, Dr. Joy. Today's topic is on disaster mental health. No, I'm not the expert. I have an expert here. But you know what we do on the Dr. Joy Show? Before we get started, we take 3 deep breaths. Are you ready? Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Last one, inhale, exhale. How do you feel? I know I feel great. I want to welcome my guest, Donna Watson Ladson, to the Dr. Joy Show. Thank you for being here, and we're going to talk about disaster mental health. Tell me a little bit about yourself first.
Well, I'm a wife and mother. I've got 4 grown children.
What?
Yeah.
And look it.
Thank you very much. I actually am kind of late to the field getting started. My journey took about 30 years to get my undergraduate degree, and then I went on to pursue my graduate, and then got licensed as a counselor, and here I am.
And what are your licenses? Because you have 2.
I'm a licensed professional counselor,
Okay.
and I'm a nationally certified counselor.
Okay.
Okay, so that's my certification. And I work with all different types of, disorders, or all different types of, issues that people have. However, we do a lot of trauma and crisis care.
Now, why? You said it took you 30 years. You look like you're about 30. So you start when you were 2. But why mental health?
It's funny. I didn't really seek out mental health, but what I found was that my friends and family would come to me and they would talk to me and tell me their problems and stuff, and I kind of just fell into it. And when I was looking for something to go into at that point in my life, people said, why don't you do psychology? Why don't you do counseling? And I didn't really take it seriously, but I started thinking about it, when they said, you help us all the time, and so I kind of fell into it like that. It's like, yeah, I guess I do kind of do this.
Yeah, you're a great listener, huh?
Evidently.
So, how is mental health defined?
I guess there's a lot of ways to define mental health, but I like to think of it like a pie. So if there's a whole pie,
right,
then we have a piece for our spiritual wellness. There's a piece for your physical wellness, psychological wellness, emotional wellness. So in a perfect world, all of those pieces are going to be there. It's not a perfect world, but the goal is to try to maintain a certain balance in our lives so that we can, we be mentally healthy.
So I know this show talks about is your prescription for total wellness, right? And we talk about those 7 wellness elements and striking a balance across all 7. But how hard is that? How hard is that?
It's very hard, Dr. Joy. And I mean, the world that we live in now is pretty complicated. We've got social media. We've got these political issues going on.
Let's not talk about that.
Exactly.
No, but you can talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on, and the wealth of information out there can be challenging because it sometimes makes it seem as if there's a bunch of things that are beyond our control.
Right.
But one of the key pieces to, and you know this very well, is dealing with the things that we actually can control, controlling that which we can control.
But sometimes we forget.
Yeah, sometimes we forget.
Let me just read this fact and tell me what you think. Mental health problems are actually very common, and this is actually coming. It's a statistic that was captured in 2014. It says that 1 in 5 American adults experienced a mental health issue. 1 in 10 young people experienced a period of major depression. 1 in 25 Americans lived with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. Your thoughts?
That's about accurate, yes. But the good news is that's not, because I don't want your audience to believe that, oh my gosh, I'm going to wind up, I'm going to be sick.
We're going to be one of those statistics?
We may be, we don't know. But the good news is that there's much more research now. There are lots of different types of interventions. We also have alternative interventions that we utilize now. So it's not like it's hopeless. Could it happen? Potentially, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the road.
What are some of the alternative things that you said? We have alternative.
Well, you know.
No,
Just-
you tell me.
I'm going to tell you because you talk about them on your show all the time. Things
Okay.
like meditation and mindfulness
Okay.
and deep breathing. So maybe yoga could be an alternative means of treatment.
So, mental health, striking a balance. I say that, I mean, this is just my opinion, right? That the mind controls everything. So, if your mind is right, then those other elements should fall in place, hopefully.
Well, we like to talk about a mind-body connection now. There was a disconnect for a long time where it was like two separate bodies, but
Right.
we know now, we understand that it's holistic. Everything goes together. So yeah, you want your mind to be in the right place, but you also want to take care of that body because it's one machine. It all works together. We don't service the tires and then not service the engine. You got to service the entire vehicle, right?
That's right.
So we want to service that whole vehicle.
Okay. So now let's add another layer to the mix because this is a topic about disaster mental health. Disaster mental health occurs or it happens when there's an emergency, some kind of event, right? And I'm just going to read this. It's common for individuals and families in and around an affected region to experience distress and anxiety about safety, health, and recovery. So, talk more about that.
Well, it's a situation where I just said to you that we try to take care of what we can control. So this is something outside of our control. It
there
just
you
kind
go.
of happens to us. So it rocks our foundation, and we feel like everything that we know and understand and believe is called into fault. So we have to find ways to kind of ground ourselves.
Right.
So disaster mental health comes in and helps to start that grounding process. So it can be as simple as just listening to someone, offering immediate care, a blanket because maybe it's cold. It could be offering you a glass of water, but that immediate human connection is so important during a disaster because maybe you've been displaced from your home. Maybe you don't know where your animals are. Maybe you're not even sure where your family is.
Oh, no, not my chipper.
Yeah, that's a huge big deal when folks lose their pets.
So, what are some of the symptoms and reactions displayed by some of the survivors of the disaster?
Well, heightened anxiety, some sadness, depression, anger.
Why me?
Yeah, or blaming themselves. I should have done something different. There can be fear, obviously, because you don't know what to expect. This is something totally outside of the norm. I don't know what to expect, so I'm really afraid. And not necessarily doing the things that I would normally do. So maybe I normally take care of myself better, but in this instant, I don't know how.
So how does the healing begin then, Donna? How does the healing for the survivors begin? Think about the people in Puerto Rico. When was that?
Wow, just a few months ago.
Okay, but they're still going through.
Absolutely.
So, discuss the need for disaster behavior health capabilities.
It's hugely important. In the last few years, we've had I don't know how many
Lots.
weather disasters.
Oh yeah.
Shootings, plane crashes. I mean, you name it. There's all types of disasters that we're dealing with now.
Right.
And folks who are just kind of out there. So they need people like myself who can come in and just connect with them on the immediate, mostly basic human needs. Just to talk to them. And the biggest deal with disaster mental health is to listen. First thing is to listen, to hear their stories, because they just need to know that there's somebody there for them. To connect them with other, resources, community resources, because sometimes everything's disconnected. So they're going to want to know, where do I go? What do I do? How do I even start this process? And we help them with that as well.
So from the disaster, there could be times when PTSD would come into play. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And the PTSD is something that wouldn't necessarily just affect the survivors of the disaster, but as well as the first responders and the other people who are there helping to care, because they are secondary. They're exposed to this trauma, so they could experience this as well. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is something that could happen a few months out, or it could even be a year or more out. But the hallmark would be that if the person has a sufficient or a sustained decline and an inability to kind of function on a day-to-day basis, heightened anxiety, fear, an inability to maybe remember the details of what happened, and maybe they are becoming aggressive, and this kind of is, you see this present for more than, say, like a month or so, then you want to start thinking about maybe getting help for yourself, or if it's one of your loved ones, maybe I want to kind of talk to my loved one about maybe seeking help, talking to their family doctor, therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist.
And it's not with someone with PTSD. Sometimes they say that, well, we know that it can happen to anyone, but it's not a sign of weakness.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, so what are some of the symptoms that you talked about? But will people with PTSD be able to get better?
Yes.
Yeah, and with what type of treatment?
There's different types of treatments. Some of the most common treatments are going to be CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
You want to talk a little bit about what that is?
It's a talk therapy, but it's a behavioral therapy. They can help you to think differently about the event.
Oh,
so maybe the way
positive thoughts?
And I'm moving you in a more positive, reframing that whole thought process. So maybe I see the event as the end of my life and everything happened bad, but let's kind of reframe it and work on how the resiliency piece, how you were able to get through this disaster and you were able to, reclaim your life, and just looking at it from a different perspective. So that's kind of how cognitive behavioral therapy works.
So, Donna, I know that when we were in the green room, you did share a little bit about you participating and lending your hands with regards to a disaster. One instance or two?
Two recent instances
Okay.
where unfortunately there were disasters.
Yeah, so you want to share both?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my original experience was back during Hurricane Harvey when I was deployed to Texas. And
where are you coming from?
I'm coming from Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Northeast PA I live. And there was a call to go and serve there to do disaster mental health, and I was blessed to be able to do that. So I was down there for a couple of weeks, and we did disaster mental health. I worked as part of a team, which was part of a much, much larger team of folks who go in to do disaster and recovery. And it was just an amazing experience working with people and being able to kind of help them in whatever little way we could in that huge disaster.
So take me and the viewers through a day in the life and being there with Hurricane Harvey. What was it? What was a day like?
Well, it was interesting because as the time went on and the waters receded, then it kind of changed.
So how long after? At what point did you arrive?
I guess about a week. Was it a week? I don't think it had been a week. Not quite a week after. And how we come in has to be working around all of the dangerous areas, because we're not first responders, so we don't go in to the dangerous areas. We kind of work around it. But we would go out into the community on a given day and kind of do assessments. So we assess to see if folks are, because there's going to be people who are going to be more at risk. If you already have mental health issues, obviously, then that's going to be more of an issue.
Well, how do you know who has the mental health issue?
We talk to people.
Okay.
And also, I mean, that's kind of what I do. So my job is to know if you're presenting in a particular way. I'm going to ask you questions and try to get a better picture. But honestly, folks are generally going to tell you if they're having some problems. And for those who don't say maybe are not getting active help, we can tell them and we'll just talk to them about it. But to talk to them about their mental well-being, we would go out in the community and just try to connect them with the services in the area, because they need to know who's doing what right now, because they're disconnected from that. Get whatever information we can about their family members, try to get them information about resources that were available, like FEMA, whatever resources that were available at the time. So we did that. We went into the shelter and we worked with folks in the shelter. We talked to them.
Group or individual?
This is a mass shelter, so sometimes we would speak to people individually. Sometimes you speak to a group. It depends on how it goes. But just sometimes laughing and literally letting them tell you their story.
So again, listening. So what's the second instance?
The second instance hit close to home because in March there was the terrible weather, and where I live in Northeast PA, we got hit pretty hard, and a lot of folks were without power. and they didn't have even water because there's well systems, so
Right,
the wells
right.
work with electricity. So we're talking
Yeah.
about people who are in the freezing cold and don't even have water.
So they don't have a backup generator connected to their house where if they lose power, then
Well, here's the other piece. You may have a generator, but first of all, the generators need gasoline, yeah, which was dear. And some of the gas stations weren't open because they didn't have power. So it really
Oh,
was
wow.
a domino effect that people were impacted, and they were moved to a shelter, a local shelter. So I volunteered. I thought I was going to be there myself because I didn't have power. Yeah, I didn't have
How
power.
long were people out of power in your area?
Um, it varied depending on the area, but I would say the average time there were people who were out for like 5 days or more.
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
I know when Hurricane Sandy hit in New Jersey, in the shore, people were out for a long time. We were out, well, our area was out for 14 days,
Wow.
but I had a generator. But again, the difficulty was gasoline.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to store massive quantities of gasoline in your house that, somebody walking around and strike a match, poof, you're singed. So it's like a dragon, right? So you are at liberty of the gas stations, and then they were running out of gas. I get it. So what was your day like there?
I would go in and I would help to feed them. Then I'd talk to them.
Okay.
I would, again, always assessment. And assessment is not just the folks who are directly affected by the disaster, but the staff as well. So always assessing the staff to see whether the volunteer staff or the paid staff, just to make sure that everybody's okay.
Right.
Where they need to be. So sometimes that means that I'm going to pull someone aside and say, hey, you need a minute, and we process together. So I did that with staff and the volunteer and paid staff, as well as the folks that are in the shelter. So again, a lot of just kind of listening to folks, hearing their stories.
So there's somebody watching this show, and they're saying, wait, I want to become a volunteer. What's your advice?
I'm going to say that absolutely become a volunteer. It's one of the most amazing experiences, and it can give you such a sense of perspective. We tend to think a lot about our situations, but when you see people in these disastrous situations, their resiliency, their gratitude,
Right.
it's a game changer.
So would you be able to recommend websites or organizations that...
I would, well, I'm going to recommend the Red Cross because obviously they do international, national work.
Okay.
And I'm the Google queen, so I'm going to say just Google the Red Cross. But if you go onto the Red Cross, it has the volunteer. It walks you through it. It's a very easy process. And I'm going to use my little cheat sheet here because
Sure.
there is an organization that kind of monitors disaster volunteer organizations. And it's a government website, and it's called the National Voluntary Organization Active in Disasters. So www.nvoad.org. And if you go onto that website, they can, they have a list of organizations that they kind of approve, and then you can start to get an idea from there.
But do they look for volunteers with certain skill sets? How does that work?
It depends on the organization because every organization is different. Like
Okay.
there's a fire corps organization, and they send firemen or doctors. They have doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals, but even that one, they will, and that one specifically, what is that? That is the Medical Reserve Corps. So if you Google Medical Reserve Corps, they have civilian volunteers as well. So there's folks who may not have medical or health knowledge who can still help out. But the best way to do it is honestly to go online and see what interests you. The Red Cross has, my gosh, they have as many different volunteer positions as people have, skill sets. So whatever it is that you're interested in, even if you're not proficient at that, it's something that you could go there and potentially learn how to do.
And they train you, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about what are some of the ways you maintain positive mental health?
Oh boy, good friends.
Good friends.
Good friends, company, family,
Okay.
spending quality time with people as opposed to, I utilize social media, but minimally.
Yeah, okay. You want to go there with social media? Let's go there.
I don't spend a lot of time on there.
Let's go there. And that's a good thing because don't you think that social media is fake a little bit? Just a little fake. Because what that says, hey, I'm putting it out there. I don't care. What it shows, a lot of people put up all the good stuff. And so if there's a person that's actually scrolling through and looking at the feeds and they're having a down day, maybe they had a down day, 2 down days, 3 down days, 5 down, turns into like 30 down days. They start to compare themselves, their life, to what they're seeing in on their feeds, which is only a microcosm of somebody's life. Hello. Right? So they get a false sense of what's really going on in the lives of others. That's why I say it's kind of fake. I mean, am I on it? Yeah. I got social media, what, Twitter. Okay, so my social media outlets are Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I got 2 Facebook pages. But I try to keep it positive because there are people out there that might be feeling down. And I hope that when they look at my page, they'll say, oh, okay, that brightens their spirit instead of, bringing negativity. But the social media, I think, is a big part of why some people are a little, that might have some mental health issues.
Well, if you think
May
that people,
add to it, Donna.
if we already are kind of struggling,
Yeah.
and then we're kind of using Facebook or Instagram
Right.
as that, the measure of wellness or the measure of what's really going on, it's just like using television or celebrities, because before we used celebrities like that.
Yes, we did.
Now
we want
with
to
the
be
15
like
minutes,
them.
exactly, 15 minutes of fame, so we got Facebook, and that's kind of what we're using to gauge what we should or should not be doing, which is why I don't spend a whole lot of time
On it.
No, you want to live your life.
Right. Right. Unless you have something positive to share that's going to create a shattered glass impact, meaning that's something positive to share with others. That means somebody else can take it and they can run with it and it can enhance their life. So you said refrain from social media or, limit it.
Balance. In all things, we want to
Balance.
create a balance. So you can make time for social media. There's certainly nothing wrong with it.
Okay, so, and you said nurturing, being around nurturing folks.
Absolutely. Spirituality
Okay.
is a big piece. So spirituality doesn't necessarily mean you go to church every Sunday, but
Right.
it means that you're connecting with your higher power.
Uh-huh. What about gratitude?
Gratitude, I can't say enough about it, is huge. Absolutely huge. Because if we can't be grateful for this, nothing else really matters.
Every single thing.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Physical health.
Okay.
Got to maintain the vessel, right?
Yes. So
So-
how do you do that? Because you look fabulous. You said it took you 30 years. You look 30.
I love Dr. Joy. I mean, I work out. I could work out a lot more, but I do work out, and I make time for that because I'm important. So I make excuses, and then I go, wait a minute, Donna, Plus, I don't tell my clients anything that I'm not willing to do myself. So it's really important for me to be genuine. So if I'm sitting there telling you that it is in your best interest and for your mental health to exercise, then I'm going to do it too.
Okay. What about saying no? Are you a big proponent of saying no?
Yeah. Because that goes back to looking out for myself. So I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to do things that I'm going to regret or that I'm going to feel resentful about. It's about stopping here and thinking about in the moment what's going to be in my best interest. And not in a selfish, like I don't care about you way, but in a, am I really going to be fully there for you and for me if I tell you I want to do things that in my heart I know I don't really want to do.
But that's good because then you're reducing your internal conflict. And when you reduce your internal conflict, you could be more authentic. And then the people that are around you get to see the real Donna.
Absolutely.
Right? So what about forgiveness?
Forgiveness, because people get confused. They think that you forgive folks for them, but we forgive folks for us. Forgiveness is for me. So I can walk around being mad at Dr. Joy for the next 10 years
I hope
because
not.
she took my parking space or whatever, but Dr. Joy is going off and having her best life. Meanwhile, I, Donna, am sitting there stewing. So forgiveness is not for you because you half the time don't even know what happened. It's for me. It's for us. It's personal. And that's kind of connected to stress because you want to keep the stress level down.
See?
And that's something we can control.
Yes.
And it's a process. It's not easy, but to actively work towards forgiveness Very important.
What about living in the present, Donna?
Oh my gosh, I was having this conversation with my husband today. That's so important because some of the anxiety that we experience now is we're so scattered that we can't even focus. My husband told me that he ordered tea today. He told the young man that he wanted a tea with sugar and lemon. So the young
Okay.
man said, "You want a plain tea with lemon." He repeated it, and he still wound up with a plain tea with lemon.
So what was wrong with the person that was taking the order then?
The person that was taking the order
Wasn't
was
focused.
exactly likely not focused, not in the moment, hearing what he wanted to hear, hearing what he thought he heard. But that's so much of us, especially with all the electronics.
Oh, okay.
Very
So
distracting.
so what about electronics? How do you utilize them to create balance in your life?
Well, Dr. Joy, I'm a work in progress, like everybody else. So that is an area where I struggle, and my oldest son spanked me recently because
Oh,
I
my
was
goodness.
texting because I'm busy, right? I'm busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Texting, and he reached out to me by phone and said, "Look, I need to hear my mother's voice. I want to
Oh,
talk to you."
wow.
Yeah, so my 31-year-old son is like, "Stop with the texting." So even I struggle with creating a balance between, the electronics. Yeah, they're great, but sometimes put them aside and make that human connection. So something I work on.
Wow. So you said that you live in Eastern PA?
Northeast PA.
Northeast, excuse me.
Northeast PA.
Northeast PA. So how can people contact you for counseling if they so desire?
I actually am one of the therapists on staff with Forensic Counseling Associates in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to give you the number to the office. I have to read it because I, believe it or not, don't know it. 570-476-7704. And that's 570-476-7704.
Now, do you do group therapy, individual therapy, Skype therapy? What kind of therapy do you do?
We don't do Skype. We do individual therapy, and we do a lot of trauma-based therapy. So we treat those who had trauma. We also treat perpetrators of trauma because it's forensic counseling. That's right.
Oh, wow.
So we're on both sides.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
You have
that's
to
a
come
thing.
back.
I would love to. It would be my
Okay.
pleasure. But we do group that. Right now, the groups have to do with perpetrators. We're starting actually a batterers group. So we're going to be doing a domestic violence group to treat
Wow.
batterers.
That's a whole nother topic, too.
Yeah.
See, you'd be a reoccurring guest on the
That
Dr.
would
Joy
be my
Show.
pleasure and honor, Dr. Joy.
On the Dr. Joy Show and the Joy of Living Show, the radio. Thank you, Donna, for sharing your knowledge, wisdom about disaster mental health in general. And I also want to thank you for you lending your hands to people that are in need.
Thank you, Dr. Joy.
Many blessings. Okay, until next time, be blessed, stay healthy. See ya!